"You're not going to believe this, but I swear it's true," Sarah whispered to herself, barely able to hold back her tears as she wiped the counters. The soft clinking of glass and the low hum of conversation from the dining area felt like a distant echo. She had been working nonstop for hours, the weight of the world on her shoulders. A place she had hoped would give her a fresh start had become just another chapter of her struggles. She was a server in a high-end restaurant, but today, it didn't feel like a place for hope. It felt like a place where dreams went to die. "You're not good enough," she told herself under her breath, trying to ignore the stares from the customers, the glances from the management. Sarah was tired of pretending like everything was okay. She was tired of being the invisible one. No one seemed to notice her efforts. No one cared about her story. At least, that's what she thought. But tonight, something was different. As she wiped down a table, a soft creak of the door caught her attention. She looked up and froze. Standing in the doorway, cloaked in a simple hoodie, was none other than Vin Diesel. The very same man who owned this restaurant. The man whose name was on the marquee outside. He was here, and he was looking straight at her. For a split second, she panicked. Her heart raced as she wiped her hands on her apron, trying to regain composure. Why was he here? And why was he staring at her so intensely? Sarah quickly turned away, not wanting to draw attention to herself. She knew that in a place like this, the staff were invisible. They existed to serve, not to be noticed. She tried to focus on her task, but the sound of his footsteps moving closer made her heart race. And then she heard it. A quiet sniffle. It was her. She was crying. Sarah didn't even realize it until now. All the stress, the long hours, the constant judgment, it had finally caught up with her. She wiped her eyes, trying to hide her tears, but it was too late. Vin Diesel had already seen. He stopped in his tracks, his sharp eyes catching every detail. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, his presence looming in the quiet of the restaurant. Sarah's face flushed with embarrassment. She didn't want to be seen like this, didn't want anyone to know how broken she truly felt. But then he spoke. "Why are you crying?" His voice was calm, gentle, and it sent a shockwave through her body. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. No one ever asked her why. They simply expected her to keep going, to keep smiling. But here was Vin Diesel, the man who owned this place, the man everyone admired, asking about her, a simple server. "It's nothing," she said quickly, wiping her eyes. But he didn't buy it. "Come on," he said, his voice softer now. "I'm not going to bite." Sarah took a deep breath, her shoulders sagging as the weight of everything she had been holding in came flooding out. "I'm just tired. Tired of trying to be enough for everyone. It feels like nothing I do is ever good enough." She didn't expect him to understand, but to her surprise, he listened. He didn't interrupt or dismiss her feelings. He just stood there, watching her, waiting for her to finish. "You've got a lot on your plate," he said quietly. "I get it. But you're not alone in this." His words hit her harder than she expected. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. No one had ever made her feel like her pain mattered. In that moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. The restaurant, the busy atmosphere, all of it disappeared. It was just her and him, two people from entirely different worlds, but for a brief second, it felt like they understood each other. She couldn't explain why, but for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt seen. "I know it's not my place to say this, but I think you've got a lot more to offer than you realize," Vin Diesel said, his voice calm but firm. Sarah looked up at him, the surprise still clear in her eyes. He had stayed, not just to hear her cry, but to listen, to understand. She had expected him to walk away, to go back to being the untouchable celebrity that everyone else saw. But here he was, standing right in front of her, genuinely concerned. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly, the words barely escaping her lips. She wasn't sure why, but she found herself wanting to know what he saw in her, what he thought of her. "I see someone who's not afraid to keep going, even when it feels like the world is against you," he said, his gaze unwavering. "That's rare, you know." Sarah had never thought of herself like that. She was just trying to get by, to survive, but now, hearing him say it, she felt something inside her stir. She felt a glimmer of hope, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in so long. "I don't know. I've always just been the girl who cleans up after everyone else," she said, shaking her head. "I'm just trying to make it through the day." Vin Diesel nodded, as if he understood exactly how she felt. That's the thing, he said. You're doing something that matters. You make a difference every day, even if you can't always see it. Sometimes, it's the people behind the scenes who make the biggest impact. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't used to hearing things like that, especially from someone who had the world at his feet. Someone who could have anyone he wanted. And yet, here he was, telling her that she mattered. Thank you, she said softly, her voice shaky. You don't know how much that means to me. Vin Diesel smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made her feel like she wasn't invisible anymore. I do know, he said. I've been where you are. I felt what it's like to be overlooked. But trust me, it doesn't define you. There was a long pause, the kind that stretched on just long enough for Sarah to process his words. She had always been the one who faded into the background, who did the work no one noticed, but in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as invisible as she thought. I'm sorry for crying earlier, she said, wiping her eyes. I didn't mean to make a scene. Vin Diesel shook his head. No need to apologize. You're human. We all need to let it out sometimes. Sarah felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It was as if a door had opened, one she hadn't even realized was closed. The pressure she had been carrying for so long began to ease. For the first time, in a long while, she felt like she could breathe. Is there anything I can do to help? He asked, his voice kind, not pitying. Sarah looked at him, unsure of what to say. She had never been one to ask for help, but she felt something inside her shift, like a spark had been lit. Maybe she wasn't destined to be stuck in this cycle forever. Maybe there was a way out. I'm not sure, she admitted. But maybe I could use some guidance. Some direction. Vin Diesel smiled again. I think we can work something out. You've got potential, Sarah. You just need someone to see it. The warmth of his words wrapped around her like a blanket, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt like she wasn't alone in this world. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, she realized that she wasn't invisible anymore. As the days passed, Sarah couldn't shake the conversation she had with Vin Diesel from her mind. Every time she walked into the restaurant, she found herself looking over her shoulder, wondering if today would be the day everything changed. She had started coming to work with a new sense of purpose, a small but growing hope inside her that things could get better. It wasn't easy, though. The other servers still treated her the same, as if she was just another invisible part of the restaurant's machinery. But now, Sarah had a secret weapon. She believed in herself a little more. And the more she believed, the more she realized just how much potential she had to change her life. One evening, as she was setting up a table for a VIP guest, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she came face to face with Vin Diesel, his familiar presence both reassuring and intimidating at the same time. How's everything going? He asked, his eyes searching hers for an answer. Sarah blinked, not sure if she had heard him correctly. I'm doing okay, she said, her voice softer than usual. She didn't know why, but it felt like the weight of her job, her life, was suddenly much heavier when he was around. It was as if, in his presence, she had to perform. He smiled, but it wasn't the usual smile. This one seemed to come from a place of understanding. I've been thinking, he said, leaning against the table casually. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I think you could be more than just a server here. I want to give you an opportunity. Sarah's heart raced. She had heard people talk about opportunities before, but those words had always felt like empty promises. This time, something in Vin's voice made her believe it might be real. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I want to offer you a position in management, he said. You've got the work ethic, the attitude, and most importantly, the heart. I've seen it. You've got what it takes to run a team. Sarah could hardly breathe. She had never imagined herself in a management role, never thought she had the confidence or skills to lead others. But I've never done anything like that before, she admitted, unsure of what she was even saying. Vin Diesel nodded, his expression unwavering. That's okay. You won't know until you try. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. And I believe in giving people a chance. Sarah looked down at her hands, suddenly feeling small, unworthy. But then she remembered something. Vin had seen something in her that she had never seen in herself. He wasn't the kind of person to offer someone something unless he was sure. She had to at least try. Okay, she said finally, her voice steadying. I'll give it a shot. Vin smiled, the warmth of his encouragement filling her with a quiet sense of pride. You've got this, Sarah. I'll help you every step of the way." As the days went by, Sarah slowly started to adjust to her new role. There were mistakes, of course, moments of doubt and frustration. But there was also growth. With each passing day, she felt more confident, more capable, and more determined to prove to herself and to everyone else that she could do this. The restaurant began to see a new side of Sarah, and so did she. It wasn't just the work that was changing, it was her. And no matter how hard it got, she knew she wouldn't give up. Because, for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt like she was truly seen. It had been a few months since Sarah started her new role in management, and while she still had her doubts, she was beginning to believe in herself more and more each day. The restaurant had started running smoother, and she had begun to earn the respect of her colleagues, even the ones who had once treated her like she was invisible. She walked through the kitchen with her head held a little higher, smiling at the staff as they went about their work. She had come a long way from the woman who had cried in front of Vin Diesel. The transformation wasn't just in her job, it was in her. But even with all the progress she had made, there were days when the weight of responsibility felt heavier than she expected. One evening, as Sarah checked in with her team during the dinner rush, she could feel the familiar pressure building in her chest. The noise of the busy restaurant, the clinking of silverware, the conversations blending together in a murmur, it all felt a little too much. She paused for a moment, stepping into the back office for a quick break. She leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths to calm herself. Just as she was about to regain her composure, there was a knock at the door. She straightened up, quickly wiping her face. "Come in," she called out. The door opened, and in walked Vin Diesel. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. It had been a while since she had seen him. He had been busy with other projects, but she was grateful for his occasional check-ins. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice warm as he looked at her. Sarah smiled, but it was a little strained. "I'm good. It's a lot sometimes," she admitted. "I get that," Vin said, his gaze softening. "You've come a long way, Sarah. I'm proud of you." She could feel the pride in his words, and it meant more to her than she could explain. "It's just, sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like I'm not enough." Vin walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture grounding her in the moment. "You're doing more than enough. I know it doesn't always feel that way, but trust me, you're making a difference. You've shown everyone here that you're not just a survivor, you're a leader." Sarah felt her chest tighten, and for a moment, she could hardly breathe. She had spent so much of her life feeling overlooked and underestimated. To hear someone like Vin Diesel, someone she respected so much, tell her that she was a leader, it made her heart swell with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick. "I don't think you understand just how much that means to me." Vin smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know exactly how much it means, Sarah. And you've earned it. You're not alone in this. We're all rooting for you." As he left the room, Sarah stood there for a moment, taking in his words. She had made it this far, but she still had a long way to go. Yet, for the first time, she felt ready. She felt like she could handle whatever came next, because she wasn't just a woman working in a restaurant. She was someone who could lead, who could inspire, who could change the world in her own way. She wasn't invisible anymore. And that thought made all the difference. As Sarah walked through the restaurant that evening, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. It had been a year since she started her journey, and the place didn't feel as overwhelming as it once did. The sound of the kitchen, the chatter of the guests, the hustle of the servers, everything felt like music now, a rhythm she had learned to follow. The heavy weight she had carried on her shoulders for so long had lifted, replaced by something lighter, something stronger. She smiled at the staff as she walked past them, offering encouragement here and there. They weren't just co-workers anymore. They were a team, and she was their leader. The transformation hadn't been easy, and there had been days where she wanted to give up. But now, she felt like she could take on anything. "Sarah, we've got a situation," one of the servers called out, snapping her from her thoughts. She turned to see him standing by the bar, looking a little flustered. "What's going on?" she asked, stepping over to him. "Table 12, they're unhappy with their meal. They've been asking for a manager, but," he trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. Sarah nodded, her confidence growing with each step she took. "I've got it," she said, walking over to the table. The couple sitting at table 12 looked up as she approached. "Good evening, Sarah," said with a warm smile. "I'm Sarah, the manager here. How can I help you today?" The woman raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Our food was cold, she said, her tone sharp. We've been waiting for it to be reheated for over 15 minutes, and no one has even bothered to check on us. Sarah took a deep breath, keeping her smile in place. I'm very sorry to hear that. Let me take care of it for you. I'll personally make sure the issue is resolved immediately. She turned to the kitchen staff, giving them a quick nod to signal that she was taking charge of the situation. Then she returned her focus to the couple. We appreciate your patience, she said, her voice steady. I'll be right back with your new meal, fresh and hot. The couple exchanged a glance, and Sarah could see that their frustration had eased, even if just a little. She moved quickly, ensuring the food was remade to perfection. As she brought the new plates to the table, she could feel the tension in the air shift. The couple smiled at her, their demeanor softening. Thank you, the woman said, her tone now friendly. We appreciate the quick response. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with a quiet pride. It's my pleasure. Enjoy your meal. As she walked back to the kitchen, she felt a surge of accomplishment. It was moments like this, when she could step up and handle things with grace and confidence, that reminded her of how far she had come. She wasn't the woman who had cried in front of Vin Diesel anymore. She wasn't the girl who had been invisible. She was Sarah, the manager of a thriving restaurant, someone who had earned respect and trust from her team and her guests. That evening, as the last guests left and the staff cleaned up, Sarah stood by the door, looking out at the quiet street. She had come so far, and yet, she knew there was still more ahead. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She had proven to herself that she was capable, that she was enough. And that, she thought with a smile, was just the beginning. As the weeks went by, Sarah's role in the restaurant continued to evolve. She was no longer just a manager. She was becoming a leader in the truest sense of the word. She had gained the trust of her team and the respect of her guests, but more importantly, she had gained her own self-respect. One afternoon, as she was walking through the dining area, she noticed a couple at a table by the window. The woman was sitting with her arms crossed, her face scrunched in frustration, while the man appeared to be trying to calm her down. Sarah immediately sensed something was wrong. She walked over to their table with a polite smile, but inside, her heart was pounding. Good afternoon. How are you two today? She asked, her tone warm and inviting. The woman looked up, clearly irritated. We're fine, but we've been waiting for over 20 minutes for our server. No one has checked on us, and we're not happy about it, she said, her voice sharp. Sarah kept her calm, nodding as she listened. I apologize for the wait. Let me take care of this for you. I'll make sure your service improves right away, she said, her voice steady. She wasn't used to dealing with complaints like this, but she was ready. She quickly signaled to one of the servers to take over the table and make sure the couple was taken care of. As she walked back to the kitchen, she could feel the familiar rush of anxiety creeping in. But this time, it wasn't fear, it was determination. She was capable of handling this. She had proven that to herself over and over again. When she returned to the front, she checked in with the couple once more. How are we doing now? She asked. The woman's expression had softened slightly, though she was still upset. It's better, but we were really looking forward to a smooth experience, she said, her voice softer now. Sarah smiled, the weight of the situation lifting off her shoulders. I completely understand. I promise you, we are going to make this right. Thank you for your patience. By the end of the meal, the couple was smiling, their complaints forgotten, replaced with appreciation for the way Sarah handled the situation. As they left, the woman even gave her a nod of approval. Sarah watched them go, her heart swelling with pride. In that moment, she knew she had made a difference. As she looked around the restaurant, she realized just how far she had come. She wasn't just a manager anymore. She was someone people turned to for solutions, someone who could turn a situation around with grace and confidence. Her team had started to rely on her more, and her self-doubt had started to fade away. The woman who had once been invisible was now the woman who took charge, who led her team with compassion, and who made her mark on every corner of the restaurant. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about the person she had become. One day, as she was wrapping up her shift, Vin Diesel stopped by to check in. How's everything going? He asked, his voice as calm and steady as ever. Sarah smiled, meeting his eyes. It's going well. I'm learning a lot. He nodded, his eyes gleaming with pride. I knew you had it in you. His words meant more to her than she could express. She wasn't just learning how to manage a restaurant. She was learning how to manage herself, how to believe in her own potential. And for the first time, she felt like the future was full of possibilities. The journey wasn't over yet, but Sarah was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. She was ready. She had proven that she was enough. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when Sarah finally allowed herself to take a break. The restaurant had been busy all day, and though the dinner rush was finally dying down, she still felt the weight of the shift on her shoulders. She slipped into the back office, where the silence seemed to wash over her like a cool breeze. The space had always been a little claustrophobic, but today it felt like a sanctuary. She sat down at her desk, staring out the small window as the rain fell in sheets outside. She hadn't realized how much she needed this moment of peace until now. The constant hum of the restaurant had become a part of her, but it was exhausting. Sarah leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a deep breath. It had been a long road to get here, and while she was proud of everything she had accomplished, she couldn't help but feel like there was still so much more to prove. But as she sat there, she realized something important. She had already proven something. She had proven to herself that she was capable. She had shown herself that she wasn't afraid to face challenges head-on. And that was worth more than anything. As she closed her eyes, reflecting on the journey so far, she heard a knock at the door. She opened her eyes, surprised. "Come in," she called out, straightening her posture. To her surprise, it was Vin Diesel. He stepped into the room, his usual calm presence filling the space. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his tone warm but serious. Sarah gave a tired smile. "I'm doing all right. It's just been a lot lately." Vin nodded, taking a step closer. "I get it. But I'm proud of you, Sarah. You've done more than just manage this place. You've turned it into something special. And I've noticed." Sarah looked down at her hands, a little embarrassed by his praise. "Thanks, Vin. I'm just trying to do my best." "Your best is more than enough," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You've earned everything you've gotten here, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You've done something amazing, and I couldn't be prouder." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She had always doubted herself, never feeling like she was truly deserving of praise. But hearing Vin say those words, in his quiet, sincere way, made her believe she had done something worthwhile. "I don't know if I can thank you enough for everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You gave me the chance when I didn't even believe in myself." Vin smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did the work, Sarah. I just gave you the opportunity to show the world what you were capable of. That's all you." Sarah looked up at him, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm not finished yet," she said quietly. "But I'm getting there." Vin nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know you are. And I'll be here if you ever need anything." With that, he turned and left, leaving Sarah alone in the quiet office. As she sat there, she couldn't help but feel like she was exactly where she was meant to be. She wasn't the same person who had walked into this job all those months ago. She had changed, grown, and learned to believe in herself. And that was the greatest gift she could ever give herself. Months passed, and Sarah's life continued to transform in ways she never imagined. The restaurant, once just a place where she worked to survive, had become her domain. She was respected by her team, trusted by her colleagues, and more than anything, she had finally learned to trust herself. As her confidence grew, so did her ambition. She started to see new possibilities for herself beyond the restaurant. She had become someone who could inspire others, someone who had the power to change the environment around her. It was a Friday night when everything clicked into place. The restaurant was buzzing with energy, the kitchen filled with the familiar sounds of sizzling pans and clattering dishes. Sarah walked through the dining area, greeting guests and checking in with her staff. As she passed by a table near the back, one of the regular patrons waved her over. "Hey Sarah," he called out, a grin on his face. "You've really turned this place around, haven't you? It's better than ever." Sarah stopped, her heart swelling with pride. It wasn't the first time someone had said something like that, but hearing it from a regular, someone who had seen the restaurant evolve, meant a lot. "Thank you," she said, her smile genuine. "We've all worked hard to make it what it is." The man nodded, his smile widening. "You've done a great job. I can see why Vin Diesel trusts you." Sarah's eyes widened slightly at the mention of his name. She had worked with Vin many times since he first offered her the position, but hearing his name in such a casual, appreciative context reminded her of how far she had come. "I'm just doing my part," she said with a modest shrug. But inside, she felt a surge of pride. Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up, the man said. This place has a new energy. You've made it your own. As he returned to his meal, Sarah stood there for a moment, letting the words sink in. She had made it her own. The realization hit her hard. This wasn't just a job for her anymore. It was a reflection of who she had become. She had gone from being a woman who doubted herself to someone who had the ability to shape her own future. She was no longer just a server, a manager, or a leader in the restaurant. She was someone who inspired change, someone who made people believe in possibilities. As she walked back to the kitchen, she felt a sense of calm, a peaceful realization that she was right where she was supposed to be. When she entered the back office later that evening, she took a deep breath and looked around. This had been the space where she doubted herself the most. But now it felt like home. And as she thought about the future, about the opportunities waiting for her, she couldn't help but smile. She wasn't just waiting for things to happen anymore. She was making them happen. And for the first time in her life, she believed that she could accomplish anything. Sarah was no longer invisible. She had stepped into her power, and nothing was going to stop her now. The weeks that followed were filled with excitement and new challenges. Sarah had settled into her role like never before, and her confidence had grown beyond anything she had ever imagined. She was not only managing the restaurant, she was helping it thrive in ways no one had expected. The staff looked to her for guidance, and the guests felt the warmth of her presence. She had become the heart of the place, and it felt like everything she had worked for was finally falling into place. One afternoon, as Sarah was sitting at her desk, reviewing the inventory and planning for the week ahead, she received a message on her phone. It was from Vin Diesel. Hey Sarah, I'd like to meet up soon. I've been thinking about the future, and I'd love to discuss some new opportunities with you. Her heart skipped a beat. The man who had given her the chance to prove herself, the man who had supported her every step of the way, now wanted to talk about the future. The possibilities seemed endless. Sarah immediately replied, setting up a time to meet with him. The next day, as she walked into the quiet cafe where they had agreed to meet, she felt a wave of nervous excitement. Vin was already there, sitting at a corner table, his usual calm demeanor present. Hey Sarah, he said with a smile as she approached. Glad you could make it. Of course, she replied, taking a seat across from him. There was a brief moment of silence, and then he spoke again. I've been really impressed with everything you've done with the restaurant. You've turned it into something truly special. Sarah felt her cheeks warm at the compliment, but she didn't want to let her emotions take over. Thank you, she said, trying to sound composed. I've just been doing my best. Vin nodded, his eyes filled with pride. Your best has been more than enough, Sarah. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about something important. I think you're ready for more than just managing the restaurant. I want to offer you a bigger role, something where you can make an even larger impact. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A bigger role? Like what? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Vin leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. I'm thinking about expanding the business, maybe opening more locations. But I can't do it without someone who truly understands the heart of what we've built here. Someone who knows how to lead, how to inspire. Sarah's mind raced. She never thought she'd be considered for something like this. Vin, I don't know what to say, she whispered. This is a lot to take in. He smiled, a reassuring look in his eyes. Take your time. But know this, you've earned it. You've earned the trust, the respect, and the chance to lead. I believe in you, Sarah. And I think this is your time. Sarah sat there, her heart pounding in her chest. This was more than just a job offer. It was a recognition of everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed. She had started as a woman who doubted herself, but now, she was being offered the chance to shape the future of something bigger than herself. After a few moments of silence, Sarah finally spoke, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I'm in, she said, a smile spreading across her face. I'm ready for this. Vin's eyes lit up with approval. I knew you would be. Let's make this happen. As they sat there, discussing the details of the new venture, Sarah felt a sense of fulfillment like never before. She was no longer just a server, a manager, or a leader of a small team. She was becoming someone who could shape an entire company, someone who could inspire and create change on a much larger scale. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Sarah had finally stepped into the life she was always meant to lead.